Have you ever been a victim of racism?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I still I have the most vivid memory of the first time I was ever racially abused when I was 8.
Yeah.
Just before I got that disc actually. But
Yeah, really.
I can all throughout my life, and I guess that sense of keeping it in for my whole life I've been having to have conversations with people about trying to build their capacity to understand oppression and racism.
Yeah.
And when we have those conversations, we have to be palatable, because if you don't deliver your ideas in a way that they can take, they get defensive straight away. And if people get defensive, then there's just no point. You're not going to do anything. So for me, music was such a good outlet, because I had to be filtered and come across in a polite way and help people understand. But with the music, it was just unfiltered, and I was able to just express whatever I wanted to express and however I wanted to say it. And I think what's been really surprising for me is people have really resonated with that, and I think it's just because it's authentic. Not that I'm never not that I'm ingenuine or anything. It's just that I was totally just able to say what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it.
True. Do you reckon in Australia racism is kind of I don't know, so they take it as a joke? You mean they'll be don't take it so seriously? They'll say something racist and then they'll be like, oh, I'm only kidding, I'm only pulling your leg or something like that.
It's like us. There's 3 stages of truth, and the first stage is denial.
Mm-hmm.
The second is defensive, and then the third is acceptance. And for Indigenous people, we have 50,000 years of history, and then the last 200 years we've had this oppression, genocide, racism. And for a lot of Australians, we're still in that first stage of denial, because no one actually, this history of Australia isn't really commonly known. My dad is Indigenous and Solomon Islander, so his Indigenous ancestors were taken from their land. His grandmother was taken from his land. Then his parents were brought up on missionaries, and then his Solomon Islander ancestry were stolen from the Solomon Islands, brought over to Queensland to work on the sugarcane fields as slaves. So it's Australia has the sugar industry, which is such a big industry in Australia, is founded on slavery, but no one talks about it, and that's just for me, that's unacceptable. I'm not going to sit here and pretend Australia doesn't have a lot of stuff to acknowledge and work out, because people think it's so far removed. But my dad, he was born as flora and fauna. He wasn't even recognised as a human under Australian law. So how are people going to say it's just a joke? A joke has to work both ways. Both people have to be laughing. Just because you say something and someone takes offence to it and you say it's a joke, it's not a joke if I don't find it funny. I'm all for a joke, man. I love a good joke, but to me, what are we joking about? Are we joking about the fact that Indigenous Australians are put in prison 9 times the rate of black South Africans during the apartheid? I'll be laughing at the fact that the Kimberley region in Australia has the highest suicide rate in the world. Guyana in South America is 46 suicides per 100,000, and in the Kimberley region of WA is 77 suicides per 100,000. That's not really a joke to me, because, and the frustrating thing that I find is, when I have to talk about these numbers and statistics, it kind of dehumanises what we're actually talking about. When I say 77 per 100,000, that's just a number, but that's actually 77 people, in Kimberley, who couldn't see that their life was worth living, so they decided to take their life. And that's no accident, that's through government legislation. After the government just suspended the Racial Discrimination Act to pass the intervention in the Northern Territory, Indigenous suicide rates increased by 500%. It's just not funny to me. That's not a joke. That's real life people, real humans dying.
And what do you reckon of what thing he said? Is it
Lane Hancock? Yeah.
Gina Rightheart's father, and he's saying now he reckons he should get all the Aboriginals together in one spot and just put sterile dope in the water and just make him sterile.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
So they can breathe themselves out.
And that was aired like
on TV,
not long ago, in the
1980s.
National platform, and that's just like, I guess what Australia doesn't understand is like these ideas that we have about minorities in Australia. It's not the truth. It's like, because Western society came into Australia, like we Indigenous Australians, we were forced to understand their way, and then we have an understanding of our way, and then we want to talk about reconciliation and moving forward. But the only way to move forward is for them to also understand our way. Like you look at all these incarceration rates of Indigenous people, it's just off the charts. And it's like, well, maybe because before the past 200 years, we had an intricate law system that worked for 50,000 years, like we're the longest surviving people ever.
Yeah.
And you think that, like, it's just arrogance and ignorance to think that there's not something to learn from 50,000 years of surviving Australia, which is one of the harshest climates in the world. We've got snow, we've got deserts, we've got rough seas. People get lost out in the desert in Australia and they're dead.
That's true.
And we survive for 50,000 years. Not only survive, like we thrive, man. Like we've got these knowledges that we're not really credited for. Like Indigenous knowledge actually has played such a big part in Western society that most people don't even know. Like you look at, for example, the contraception pill. That's from Indigenous knowledge. There's so many examples, and it's just.
You reckon that's Indigenous people all over the world? That same thing that's happening to.
Yeah, 100%. Like you look at what happened in America. The Native American people, same thing. Totally dispossessed. And it's really interesting when you look at Indigenous populations around the world, and a lot of them correlate with, the same suicide rates, same rates of incarceration, same disparity between health, the same disparity between education. And it's a really interesting quote. It's like, if you want to, like, dispossess people, like, the first thing you can take away is their land, but then the second thing you need to take away is their culture. And for us, that was, language. And you look everywhere else, in America or in Australia, we were forced to not speak our language. And for us, 50,000 years of knowledge is embedded in that language because we are an oral society.